All right, I think we are live. So this is lesson 12, lesson 2 for Chris Huntingford on the practical tips on governance and ALM. If you haven't watched lesson 1, I would advise you to stop right now, go to lesson 1, and then come back to this one, because lesson 1 was loaded with gems, really good stuff that people should know even before choosing technology. I really appreciate what he did in lesson 1. But Chris, floor is yours. I don't want to steal any more time from you. And thanks again for being here. Appreciate it.
Anytime, my friend, anytime. Can I ask you a favor? Would you mind making me admin just so I can screen share? Yeah, cool.
All
All
right, you
right.
got it.
Well, bam. Okay, you guys can see that? Cool.
Yes, sir. We can.
I have far too many slide decks open right now. I have to just show you this while I'm here. But yesterday, this is what was presented to people.
Wow,
So,
that's
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
You're gonna get some interesting little nuggets today, I hope. Anyway, right, folks. So thanks again for having me. And again, Victor, thank you for putting this together. It's always cool to be here. Right. So we're gonna go and do some stuff, like recap on some stuff from the last session, and then we'll do a bit more of a deep dive. And I'm gonna show you some things, right? And also we're gonna have a little bit of fun. Okay. Now, let's have a look. Okay, so right. Just so that you all know, blah, 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 this call is recorded for quality purposes. If you don't want to be on the video, turn your camera off. Otherwise, put your camera on and let's talk nonsense. Anyway, today's agenda looks as follows, right? So we're going to do an intro, obviously, then a bit of a recap. We're going to be talking about a couple of things around solution sizing, the team you should be using or could potentially use, the environments, and then a solution breakdown. And we're going to do some fun stuff as we go. I'll try and give you as many practical examples as possible. um, and yeah, hopefully this all makes sense. So anywho, without any further ado, those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris Huntingford, and I'm the low-code lead from a company called ANS, and that they're in Manchester in the UK. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. And what I get to do is run around and tell everyone why Power Platform is awesome. Yeah, so that's my role. What I want to do is just quickly do a slight run through on some of the stuff we were talking about last session. So if you do get a chance, definitely check out the last session. It kind of this one builds on the last one. So we were talking about ALM. And as I said before, everyone makes the assumption, and even when you look on the articles on the internet, they make the assumption that ALM, application lifecycle management, is all about moving solutions between environments, which is not really true. ALM is an integrated system of people, processes, and the technology that manage the life of an application. So you may find that some apps are there temporarily, and that's cool, right? We make temporary things all the time, and some are not. It's also important to remember that at the moment, the tech is not always the thing, right? It cannot always be the thing that defines ALM. There's loads of other stuff. So, as I said before, you all would have gone through things like learning about Azure DevOps and GitHub and all these other cool tools. That's only part of it, right? I can also tell you, I was on a call recently with Microsoft, excuse me, and I saw some really awesome functionality that they've now included in the new managed environments. Now, I'm not going to demo that to you today. If I had a chance to set it up, I would have, but it is way cool, right? So it's definitely worth checking out from a tech perspective. Again, where do you start with ALM? Don't make the assumption that it's just tech. There are people and process involved as well, right? So think about what are people making? Again, the top three things. Always ask these three things of anyone that talks to you about Power Platform and low code. What are people making? Where are people making that stuff? And who is making it? And if you can answer those three things, you're in a really good place to kind of progress. But if you can't answer those three things, be aware that you may get challenged, right? And you will run into challenges. Again, just a bit of a recap on the solution sizing thing. So there's different types of solutions you can build, okay? And we'll go through that in a bit more detail, and we'll do an interactive mural board as well. So people will build different things in the platform. What are they building? So we need to understand the types of things that people are making and why they are making them. And as I said before, what we will do is a bit of an interactive mural board. So I've got one ready and waiting. I'm going to drop this link in the chat, and Feel free to have a mess around with it a bit if you want. Get it ready, get it open, and I'll explain to you what this is going to be used for later. Anywho, so remember, solution sizing is key. Also talking about things like your environment strategy, which we will go through in a bit more detail, but don't make the assumption that environments are just dev, test, and prod. That's not a thing. That is a thing if you're doing some pretty straightforward stuff, but you'll find that different parts of the world and different regions need different environments for different things. And the example I used before is that actually, if you are building stuff in Germany and you release certain data out of Germany, that's actually not okay, and you can get fined for it, right? So data has to live in certain places and have a residency in certain places. So that's a quick recap. So just remember, what are people building? Okay, so let's figure out what they're building. Let's figure it out. Who is going to be building it? So let's get the team, okay? And where are they going to be building it? And if you keep those three things in your head when you think about ALM, you'll be gold. So what are we going to start off with? Let's start off with solution sizing. So solution sizing is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I gave you the example last time that not all solutions are built equal, okay? So not all solutions can be built equal and are built equal. Some solutions are more important than others. And I'm going to show you how to figure that out, right? Because not every solution goes through a dev, test, and prod. It shouldn't. Not all of them will. And I'll show you how to do that as well, right? So just remember that there are solutions that should be treated in a certain way and need to be more secured and locked down. But other examples like, you know, if you've got something very basic, it may not necessarily need to be locked down. And I'll show you that. So the first things first is, I don't know if any of you ever have heard of this. It's called a complexity and criticality matrix. So this is one of the greatest tools in the world, right? It looks really simple, but it's actually super, super powerful, okay? So before you start your ALM, before you start your application lifecycle management, typically you need to figure out what you're going to make, right? So I have this way of doing it, and this is my favorite charts. I have it open all the time, and I talk to people. It's super, super helpful. And what it does is it lets you categorize your solutions. Now, what I do is I always put them into quadrants. So I have my do later quadrant, which is like, okay, looks fairly important, looks well, looks like it's something I could use, but not really that important. I have the do now, which is like, hey, this is critical. You need to do this immediately. I have the plan to do next, which means, hey, this is critical, but it could be a little bit difficult. And then I have rethink or rationalize, like rethink this idea. That's not something you're going to want to do immediately. When I start looking at the way that this works, you can actually, we call it T-shirt sizing. It may not necessarily be called that all over the world, but it's a kind of slang term that we use in tech. And when we say T-shirt sizing, what we mean by that is that actually we are going to be able to classify our solution, which is pretty exciting, right? So we can classify our solution based on a certain range. So I have low, medium, and high. Also, I'm completely aware that not every solution in the world is going to fall into one of these three categories. You might have a mixture, okay? But we're going to keep it as simple as we possibly can for now. So remember, this is around the solution sizing. What I was also thinking about was when I think about these specific solutions, I think about ones that are like of low value, so they're not that critical, they're not that complex. What do they need? Where do I make them? Who makes them? Pretty interesting question, right? Like, who is going to make the solutions that are categorized as low? What about the solutions that are categorized really high in that high bracket? Who makes those? Who edits those? When do they edit those? How do they get edited? Why? And that's the biggest thing, right? It's not just a simple answer of, hey, it works one way. And I'm also, like I said, I'm completely aware that I don't think that it's always going to be one thing, right? I don't think it's always going to be one of those three. It may kind of end up being a little bit more, and it may be a mix. So I want you to just look at that and think of it for a second. Who is going to be making those things? Where are they going to be made? And how are they going to be built? So that's really, really key. I'm just trying to log into one of my demos. The second thing that you've also got to think about is, well, what about classification, right? So what about the way in which we classify these things for other people to understand? So I've got this little matrix that I use as well. I'm going to move on to that one. You can actually see I've got my classification, and this goes into a little bit more depth. So my build effort, right? So you can see these are for low. They're typically single apps and automations. They're very straightforward and not hugely complicated. I might have medium solutions that are like apps and flows. So they actually are using the solution functionality inside Power Platform. And then you have high build effort where things are a bit more complicated. So those are what you would call actual flow-on solutions. You have the different data structures. So a lot of the time in Power Platform, in fact, I'll be impressed. Does anyone know where most of the data in the Power Platform lives? I'll be very impressed. Chuck it in the chat. And if anyone can tell me, yeah, I don't know, I'll give you a distance high five, right? That's all I got. But it's really, really important to think about where all the data in the Power Platform is, or a good amount of it, right? So Victor says Dataverse. Sadly not, I wish. So the most popular tool for storing data in the Power Platform is actually SharePoint lists. And over 55% of the data that is in the Power Platform is stored in SharePoint lists, right? It's pretty crazy. So yeah, the second thing is medium solutions using tools like Dataverse. And the third one is using things that are in the Azure stack, like SQL, Cosmos, all those types of things. Also think about support. When you make a solution, who supports it? So I have a rule. If it's a low valued solution, if it's something that lives kind of at the bottom of the stack, right? So one of these over here, if you make it, you support it. Okay, that's the rule. I'm not, as an IT department, I'm not supporting every single solution that I find in the default environment. It's just not happening. And I'll show you something interesting, actually. If I go and take a look at one of my environments, so let's go out to defaults. Look at all these things. Look at that bad boy. Hey, what's up? FDH, DHFGH. Look at that. That's phenomenal. I've got testcom equal lengths. Yeah, look, idea 45645. So you can see that this is all kind of random stuff that's just been built in the Power Platform. Okay. So now, how do I know what's actually being used here? And you can obviously track that using the Center of Excellence, which you would have seen at another point. But think about this very, very quickly. If I have all this stuff in here, do you think IT should be supporting these? Absolutely not. No ways. If you're going to build it in this environment, guess what? That's not up to IT to support. That's your baby. You got to support that, right? When you start thinking about other environments, like what about the medium ones? So if you build something, who manages that? You manage it if it's a little bit more complicated, or do we manage it? And actually, it's a little bit of both, right? So you can make it and you can pass it up to the IT team and they can manage it. And then finally, high value solutions are we make, we manage. That's typically pro devs with a more kind of IT focused or IT focused delivery. So just remember, support is a big deal in any organization. If you make an app and you end up with loads of apps like these, every single app you make, every single flow you make is going to have an impact on support. Those people are KPI'd, the support people, that's something that hits the bottom line of the business, right? So if people don't support solutions, that's a problem. But also, the more you make, the more kind of structure you need around support. So think about the life cycle of that solution there. You've got monitoring, standard monitoring for low-based stuff, medium monitoring, I call it managed monitoring. So that's effectively potentially putting in things like app insights and using tools like Purview. And then you have way more detailed monitoring around, like going deeper into app insights and deeper into the Purview stuff. Finally, the thing that you all know, ALM, that's what says on the Microsoft website. Do we need to move these solutions? Well, as I said before, this over here, I am a test canvas app. That's never going to be moved, right? In fact, that should probably be purged or deleted. But I'm a test canvas app is not a mission critical solution, okay? So I'm not going to move it. I'm not going to move it out into another environment. However, let's take a look at this one. Cloud for sustainability, yeah? So I've got a couple of solutions in here. I've got a couple of really important apps that are run in my Cloud for Sustainability solution. These are important. These I need to track and manage and move with my solution functions, okay? And then finally, the really big chunky stuff is you will need to move. Obviously, your environments, where are people building? If it's a small solution, who cares if they build it in default? Nobody cares. If you've locked your data down correctly, that's totally cool. So leave them there. Remember that thing called team productivity I told you about? So when you start thinking about the different types of environments, and I had this list over here, whoopsie, you can see I've got team productivity for a specific country, or potentially team productivities for a specific department. Those are team-based solutions, team productivity solutions. Excuse me, sorry for the coughing, folks. Got a bit of a frog in my throat. That's stuff that may not necessarily need to be moved out either, but it may grow into something that gets moved across to the rest of the business. So I may move this out of my team environment, not Dataverse for teams. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a team environment, an environment that only certain people have access to. And I may move that up into my tiered environments, right? Like my dev, test, and prod. Same with the connectors. Low-based solutions normally use M365 connectors. It's normally SharePoint and Excel. Honestly, because you can't block those connectors either, and you can't. The best you can do is move some of them to business and some of them into non-business. With the medium kind of things, when you're looking at a lot of the medium solutions actually do use premium connectivity, and then finally, when you're using the high-based solutions, you've normally got custom connectors in there as well, which I'll show you. Again, visibility, who's going to use it, right? That'll be personal. You can actually, in the new managed environments, you can stop people sharing apps. You can do it anyway in security roles if you want, but you can now legally. So the security roles one at the moment is a bit of a hack. But if you're using managed environments, you can stop people from sharing apps, which is awesome, right? So make it truly personal productivity. For your team, you may share those solutions with like 5 or 6 people, and then your org is obviously a much wider type of scenario. And then finally, who makes this? The citizen typically makes these low-based solutions here. I don't know why that ended up being deleted, but that's business technologists. So that's somebody that is typically a little bit more technical than what we deem as a citizen developer, but also has the ability to, get a bit more involved in IT. And then Microsoft call these folks pro devs. I just call everyone makers, right? Because I believe that it's normally a mixture of people. So that's pretty cool, right? And if I go back to my little quadrant and I start thinking about this, well, how does this all affect? I'm going to quickly show you something. And if you want, you're more than welcome to join in on this mural board. I will drop the link in the chat once again, just for the folks that didn't make it on time. So let's pop it in there, just in case anyone wants to join in. Oops, that's the wrong link. Apologies, folks. Let me get the right one. And there we go. Mural, visitors, copy link. So this is one of my favorite exercises to run with people. And you can take out a free version of Mural if you want. Microsoft sometimes call this as part of their Catalyst program. And if you want, you can join in here and you can actually run this exercise with an organization. So what I typically do is I'll get a list of solutions that they want to build. And I'm like, hey, let's think about this stuff. And I've had everything. I've had like kudos, incident management, safety, health, environment, quality, timesheet solution, scheduling. Let's call this one parking, spot, booker. There's loads, right? You can have, sorry for my spelling, I'm just not going to be able to spell properly. You can have loads of different types of things that go in here, right? Another good one is going to be, whoops. And you feel free to make your own little post-its if you want. Another great one that I always get asked is they have the ideations, they have these idea boxes. So ideation solution. And feel free to add your own ones. And actually, if you want to, pop them on the little board. This thing's locked and let's start thinking about this, right? So if I take a look at my board and we have a kudos app, I'll show you how this works. So I should have put in the labels. Let's just stick this one in there. This is complexity. There we go. So that's this side. And this last bit is criticality. Cool. So if you want to add a sticky, all you have to do is double click and it'll add it for you and you can change the color. And typically what I do with organizations is I'll run them through this process, right? So I'll say, okay, let's think about one of the solutions that you're looking at. So an ideation solution. How critical is that to the business? Most of the time, it's not super critical, right? So they may end up somewhere over here, and I'll use the bottom line there. If you think about a parking spot booker, that sounds a bit more critical than ideation because people get angry with each other. A scheduling solution, probably a little bit more important. A timesheet solution is very important. An incident management solution sounds pretty important as well. And finally, a kudos app, that doesn't sound very important. So if I look at these things that I've got on the bottom line, you may end up with hundreds of these, literally hundreds of them. So what I found is that I normally go through the process of thinking, well, where does this fit in from a complexity perspective? So a timesheet solution isn't actually that complex to build. I mean, you will need data and there will be a lot of it, but it's not rocket science, right? You can actually make that fairly with the tools in the platform and not break the bank. So I'm going to stick that there. Incident management, I don't find those that difficult to make either. They may be rules and things that you put in, but you can build those in flows. Scheduling's a pain in the ass. I'm not even going to go there with that one. Parking booking, yeah, those are also not actually that hard, but there's a lot of relational data structures, so it may be around there. Ideation tool, that is super, super easy to make. Like super easy. And a Kudos app Kudos app may be a little bit more difficult. So if I start looking at this and I go, is a scheduling solution more difficult than a timesheet solution? Yes. Is a timesheet solution sort of more difficult than a parking spot booker? Actually, this is a little bit more difficult, and that's for me a little bit easier. So that's how I know. And then I start thinking, right, which one of these should I build first? So let's size them. When you land up with anything on the line in the do now thing, in the do now piece, that's the solution you want to start off with. That's typically like something that's going to be really, really, really good to build out really quickly. But also, from a solution sizing perspective, it's not something that necessarily needs to be built inside a full-on like dev test, pre-prod, prod, et cetera, environment. That could be built in a team productivity environment, depending what it's used for. Okay. So typically at this point, I shoot back to my chart and I go, okay, let's start thinking about all the solutions I've got. And that's typically what these things look like. These are massively complex, but I don't think that these are things that we should build right now. I feel like these are probably things we should think about and do later and maybe rethink. These ones I'll just let the citizen devs build in default. I don't really care. Like, have at it, you know. These ones are probably built into team productivity, and these will potentially require some application lifecycle management. And these over here will definitely require ALM. And they will definitely require the ability to actually make and go through those pipelines. So you got to figure out what you're going to build, right? Now, what I typically do is I make something like this. It's my little very, very high level solution design diagram. And I'm like, cool, this is what I'm going to make, right? I know what I'm going to make. I've gone through my sizing model. I feel like I could probably build this this would probably land up in a critical environment because it's incident management or whatever, but this is what I'm going to build. So I've sized my solution. So based on the solution sizing model, just remember, wherever you are will require more or less ALM. So the thing that I'm going to make, I'm just going to call it the timesheet solution, actually. The timesheet solution, I'm going to build it, and I know it's high, right? Because it's going to have high visibility. I will need ALM. I will need to move it between those different environments. Right. Next thing to do is think about your maker team. So who's going to be part of your solution? So who is going to build this stuff, right? Now, normally you go through a set of requirements gathering, but your maker team is really important. And Microsoft talk about fusion teams, right? Now, please understand that a fusion team could be anyone. It could be Gary from accounts, Karen from accounts, and then Bob the developer, right? Doesn't matter. They may have different names. You may call them makers or subject matter experts or architects or data scientists. That's irrelevant to me. The way I see it is like this. Every person that is using the Power Platform has a different skill set. Like, if you look at the environments around me, I'm a crazy person. Like, excuse me, I am. I love color. I love going nuts. Even the tattoos on my body are super duper colorful, right? But also I like logic. So for me, being part of like a team where I can share that and be better at building stuff makes it easier for me to build, right? And makes me more productive. And that's the cool part, right? So for me, I love being in those types of teams. But the other thing you've got to consider is this. What about everyone else? What does that team look like? Who is going to make things? Now, you're probably thinking, what on earth does this team have to do with ALM? I'm going to show you because it complicates things massively if you have a huge team. For obvious reasons, but I'll get into the actual technical details as to why. So as an example, this is potentially what a team could look like. You might be a user of Power Platform. So Microsoft call you customers. I just call everyone an organization. And as a user of Power Platform, you will have people in your business. As a person that delivers Power Platform solutions, Microsoft call you a partner or a contractor. But it's important to make a fusion team, a mixture of people. And this is where the complexity starts. When you have a large mixture of people in a team, there is one thing that everyone asks. Where are we making stuff? Pretty sure every single one of you that makes stuff in Power Platform has been asked this question. Where are you going to make stuff? Well, let me tell you, this has been the bane of every developer or solution architect's existence since the dawn of Dynamics, right? It's never, ever been easy to do this. So, and let me tell you, it's the same in every other vendor you have. It's just never easy, and I'll explain why. Excuse me, your environment strategy is top of the bill. Top of the bill. It's the star in the Christmas tree. It is the one thing that you need to start with once you've got your teams and the thing you want to make in place, right? And remember, environment strategies are going to differ for every company, okay? I showed you that slide earlier. I'm going to create PowerPoint Inception. Let's do this. I'll show you something cool. But when you start thinking about the environment strategy, it's not just dev, test, prod. Let's see if this actually works. There we go. I'm presenting the PowerPoint that I'm presenting. Ha ha ha, cool. So this is going to be different for everyone, right? This is my interpretation of it. And you can see I've got global environments, country environments, department environments. My dev, test, prod is different here. I've got dev, test, prod for each area. You could have a dev, test, prod for every single country, which makes it really interesting because then your environment count goes from 1 environment per country to 3. And that makes it really, really difficult to manage. And don't worry, I'm going to further complicate this, so just bear. So think about this. What about building? Do you all build in 1 environment? Holy smokes, yeah, let's all build in the same environment. Oh, Armageddon, I'm so excited. Check this out, right? We're going to build everything, all of us. In fact, we're just not going to have environments. We're just going to make everything in default. We're going to put a Dataverse in default, and we're just going to build solutions in default. Have a look at this bad boy. Imagine the dependencies. It's a nightmare. I was going to swear, but I'll behave. But this is nuts. This is nuts. Imagine having millions and millions and millions of people or users or makers building solutions on top of one another. I know you learned about solution layering. It's really important, but dependencies are literally the most difficult things to unpick in the world. It's kind of like, I call dependencies basically a tangled up ball of wool that's wet. And have you ever tried to untangle wet wool? Good luck. So just bear that in mind, right? The next thing is how many people are making stuff. Do you just have 1 developer in your team that makes stuff? For me, I never have 1 dev. I don't think I've ever just worked with 1 person. Like, there's always people doing crazy things in the stuff I make. What are the solution overlaps? We're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you a practical example. What is your solution management strategy? I'm probably going to say something that's going to upset somebody during that part of the session. So I'm sorry. I'm just going to give you forewarning. I mean, is this a clean Power Platform solution or are you building with Dynamics? My business partner, Jason, has got the best saying in the world. Keep the core clean. And I'll explain how to do that shortly. If you walk away with anything from that session, this should be it, that last point. And also me making a lot of noise. Right, so environment strategy. Totally stole this from Microsoft. Had this in the deck forever. Makes perfect sense. Never going to change. No, I'm lying. It is going to change. But if you think about the way that projects work, the projects that I've worked on have always been like fairly different. So in this example, you can see that they've got this great critical project dev, critical project test, English words, critical project production. Say that 5 times really fast, right? So moving solutions between these environments is really important, right? But then it starts getting more interesting because you have business units. So I showed you that slide with the departments. You've got department dev, department test, department prod. You've also got important projects. So you've got specific environments for a project. And those may be done there in this exact same route. So all that Microsoft have done here is taken that beautiful, colorful slide that I made over here. That's departments, and you've got dev, test, prod, and they've just made it look pretty gloomy. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. That's actually, that is a really great slide. So that's fine, but what if you have a Multimaker team? Oh, come on, admit it, that sounds really cool. Multimakers. Also, I put a granny at the top there because, I don't know, she just looked like she was writing something on a keyboard, so that's where she landed, right? What if you have a Multimaker team? Also, saying the words Multimaker just makes me very happy, and I literally can't tell you why. But you have Multimakers, you have loads of people doing stuff, right? Awesome. So as a Multimaker, you have 4 different devs or 3 different devs. So what do? Do you export every dev solution? So you have Mrs. Miggins over here building solution A, and you have Jeremy and Kathy over here building solution B, and you have Sad Ronald over here building solution C. And then do you export those all as managed into the roll-up environments and go straight to test? Or do you export them all as unmanaged, then munge them together over here? I don't know. Anything could happen. This is great. It's going to be Armageddon. No idea. But that's the thing. It's never just one dev environment, is it? I've seen examples where there's like 20 of these. And this is why I say your environment strategy becomes so important when you look at the structure of your team. Personally, I've got a few things that I like to do here. And I can tell you, I try not to split the dev environments out too much. And that's just me. But sometimes you have to, right? Sometimes if you're building 2 pretty big chunky solutions in isolation, you may also want to have separate test and prod. But I have seen the scenario many times where people build here and consolidate here and then roll up. And you can best believe the patching and the updates are a nightmare to manage, right? So is that a good tool? Maybe, maybe not. It's really up to the way you want to manage your project and how you manage your solutions. Which brings me to my next point around actual solution breakdown. And this is where we start getting into some of the chunky stuff and some of the weird discussions, right? So there's certain elements in Power Platform I've literally just never used, okay? And there are some, and some of those exist in the concepts of solutions, right? Now, there's a lot of argument. Now, first of all, I'm just going to tell you that I don't mind getting into the arguments of unmanaged versus managed. And if you tell me you're putting unmanaged solutions into production, you're welcome to your wrong opinion, right? But I'm telling you that's a bad idea. I've been burnt multiple times by doing that. So, oh, I love, yeah, Victor, managed solutions rule. By the way, in the chat, collaborative dev is a bit challenging on Power Apps. Any tips on what to do or share? Yeah, so it depends what you mean by Power Apps, because if you're talking about model-driven apps, that's totally easy to collaborate on, right? But if you're talking about Canvas apps, that is coming. It actually may have dropped. But also, you have to be very careful with Canvas, and I'll explain. I'll actually go into a Canvas app and explain that a little later. But just understand that, first of all, Power Platform is not Power Apps. Power Platform is a collection of tools, of which Canvas apps, my friend, is but one tiny digital brick. And that's a Lego brick that I'm showing you. So yeah, bear in mind that when you start thinking about collaborating, you need to really, really be careful, especially on Canvas. But there are ways around that. Back to the managed versus unmanaged. Unmanaged solutions belong in dev. That's it. I will never, ever, ever, ever take a solution out of dev that is unmanaged. Not going to happen. And I've done it, and I've been burnt, and I've hacked Power Platform and hacked Dynamics as often as possible. And I can tell you it's not good for anyone, right? That's the kind of stuff that makes me cry. So let's just think about the solution breakdown concept, right? How do you plan on managing your solutions? It's like everyone's got a different opinion on this. I've seen so many folks with different opinions on managing solutions. And I can tell you, I've seen some pretty interesting things. And like, I've got my own way of doing things, and other folks will have their own way of doing things. But like, I can tell you what doesn't work. So how do you plan on managing them? Does each person build their own solution? Do people work and share solutions together in the same environment? What do you do about dependencies? Oh man, any of you ever worked on any of you ever tried to uninstall ADX Studio, which is now Power Pages? If you've ever tried to uninstall that and you managed to do it, like, I want to high five you, because it's been the most diabolical experience getting rid of that thing. And it's so many others. Like, I've actually seen other ISV tools that once it's in the environment, you literally cannot get rid of it. Okay, so you got to be careful about how you build. Yeah, same with marketing, totally. And then, does each solution have a specific set of tech? This is something I don't like. I welcome the challenge, but I don't think that. And I'll explain what that means shortly. And then what if you're using other tools like Dynamics? So how often do people install Dynamics in an environment and then build something with it? So it happens a lot. And in fact, Dynamics is one of the primary contributors to Power Platform solutions. So let's have a look, right? The first scenario is what I call solution per component. I hate this concept. I hate it. I know some people love doing it like this, but what you'll find folks do is they will build a They will build a solution just for the data model. Then they'll build a solution just for flows. Then they'll build a solution just for the apps. Like, I've never had a good time doing this. I've always had massive issues on dependencies. I've had, sorry, not on dependencies, on actually updating and patching. Like, I've really, really struggled, because if you go ahead and add a field in a table, and then you want to go and make sure that field's visible in the app, you've basically got to patch two solutions, right? So I don't like it. I've never done it this way. I've tried to do it this way a couple of times. It hasn't worked, so I've never done it in production. I don't plan on doing it in production. Like I said, I welcome the challenge, but typically what you would do is the person making the solution would pop into the environments, create a solution, call it tables, and then go ahead and just add in all of the all the tables. I still can't call them tables. To me, they're entities. But add in all the entities and then export the data model. So that might be plausible, but then what do you do about the app? What do you do about all the other bits? I'm pretty sure some of you have tried to install the Power Platform Center of Excellence starter kit. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But that's actually not as bad. Imagine that was done in this way. Imagine that starter kit was designed in this way. You'd be there for a month just installing and uninstalling. So we find a lot of people do this. Yeah, fine. That's the way it works for you. Cool, but it's never really worked for me. The one that I like, this is one of my more sort of favorite versions of the whole thing, is a solution per use case. So I do this quite a lot. Normally I actually have maybe 1.5 solutions per use case, right? And Microsoft did this pretty well. I found this really kick-ass blog from Nova Context. So this is the link. And if you get a chance, you should check it out. The person that put this ALM blog together, honestly, they have spent hours and hours and hours researching scenarios. So like I nicked this screenshot from their page because I just thought it was absolutely brilliant, right? And you've learned about solution layers around the user layer versus the actual data layer. But let me tell you, I really think this is a great way of doing it. And if you look at independent software vendors, like Click Dimensions are one of my favorite. They have a really good way of managing solutions, and they do it from the patching perspective. Well, they used to. I don't know if they still do it this way, where what would happen is that they would build a single solution and then make changes, and then you kind of patch upwards. So I really like doing this. If you look at the way the Center of Excellence starter kit is structured, it's the same sort of thing, right? So if I go into COE, and I'm just going to go and pick up, Pranav made a really good comment in the chat, like the starter kit is absolutely awesome, right? So if I go in here and I take a look at the Center of Excellence core components, I'm in the Teams one, but it was a stupid thing to open. Anyway, it'll give you a good view, which you can actually see. They've got 11 apps, 12 choice fields, you've got 40 cloud flows, loads of connection references, loads and loads, and then obviously environment variables and tables. So, great question in the chat. When moving dev environment to test or prod environment, how can we prevent rewriting the flows? You can package flows and move them. You can do that pretty. You can add them to solutions and do that. I've kind of had to do that before, and then you can use environment variables for the connections. That's a good way to do it. But yeah, it was a problem in the past, but you can definitely package flows. Anyway, back to the point, right? When you look at the solutions per use case, I think this is a great example because this is a collection of things specific to the use case, right? So this is really good. And the way that they've done it is that when you want to make an update to this, it basically patches upwards. So you can choose to upgrade or update, and I'll always get those two mixed around. So I've got a slide on that. But yeah, really, really great example of how to do this type of stuff. The last one I wanted to talk to you before I get on to one or two other things is my personal favorites. When you're building around Microsoft Dynamics or the sustainability cloud or the financial services cloud, you have to start thinking around how are you going to build. This is one of the biggest magic tricks I learned from a company called Peppermints some time back. A chap called Mike was so smart. It's one of the coolest things that I've seen, and I build in this manner all the time. So from an ALM perspective, from a solution management point of view, you've got Dataverse, right? So if you install an environment, you get the common data model inside Dataverse. Awesome. And you've got accounts and contacts and all that stuff. What's also interesting is that came from a thing called the Open Data Initiative, which was an agreement from Microsoft, SAP, and Adobe to kind of match data structures. So this is really cool. And then you install Dynamics. We've all done it, or not everyone, but a lot of us have done it. So what you'll do is you'll find that you've got an environment over here. And if I pop into my apps, you can actually see when it loads eventually that I've got a bunch of Dynamics apps in here, right? So yeah, very, very important. As some of you may know, you have dependency issues. So I have a rule. When I build solutions in Dynamics, in Power Platform, I build next to Dynamics. Okay, so I try not to touch this as much as possible. It's a very hard thing to do, but I'll actually show you a practical example where I call it keeping the core clean. Jason calls it keeping the core clean. Don't build directly on top all the time if you've got a big chunky solution. Build as much of it as you can outside of Dynamics. So the example I'll give here is that if you build a fleet management solution and you have a table for vehicles, a table for drivers, I'm not using contacts in this scenario, a table for drivers, a table for assets, a table for traffic fines. So you've got like 10 or 20 tables. Not all of those are going to link to Dynamics straight off the bat. The thing that links the fleet management solution that I've made in Dataverse to Dynamics is only a few entity relationships. So I make another solution and I call it a bridging solution. And a bridging solution is effectively another layer of solution that brings the two together. So if anything happens to Dynamics that's really weird, my core cannot break. My core fleet management solution cannot break at all. My bridging solution can break, but that's only got my relational links in, and I will show you this actually in real life. I've done it in a Cloud for Sustainability project. So this is really important. So what I typically do is I build this in a naked Dataverse environment or a clean Dataverse environment. I export the thing out, I import it into another environment as managed, and then I build my bridging solution on top. And that's just one of the ways that I've done it before. It's worked really well for me, and it's protected a lot of the IP that I've made, right? So the example I want to use here in real life is this. As you can see over here, I have a bunch of environments, and I have a thing called POC. And in POC, I have a projects for sustainability solution. And if I go in, I can't show you the full thing, but if I pop in, you'll be able to see that I've got several data entities. So there's all my data entities. I've got some dashboards. I've got some pretty good stuff. And the actual solution over here, there's my projects for sustainability, right? So what I typically did is I'm like, okay, cool. That's my separate solution. It has got everything I need from a core. So if I ever update the core of my solution, it will be here. What I then did was that I have my sustainability trial. And this is the third version of the sustainability trial. So I've had to ALM this 3 times and it works beautifully. Here's my projects for sustainability. Okay, and you can see that as a managed solution, right? Everyone cool with that? What I've also got is got my bridging solution. And all my bridging solution has is it's got a couple of data entities. So I've got 5 tables that link together. So my invoice lines table, that's a Cloud for Sustainability table. That is a Cloud for Sustainability table, and that's a Cloud for Sustainability table. These two are not, right? Those are mine. But all I've done is I've only included the things that I need. What I've also done is I've included the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability app. So what happens if anything breaks in the Microsoft version, which it shouldn't do, but I'm still pretty picky. If anything breaks, the only thing that can break is their app and my bridging solution. In here, all that I've done is I've just added simple fields and columns. That's it as a relational thing, just lookups, right? So if I go into the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability solution, into Sustainability Manager, that was a really stupid thing to do, sorry. Let's just get in there. Right, if you go in there and you take a look, this is Microsoft-y stuff, very, very cool. If you haven't played with this, I recommend playing with it. So this is the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. And there's my little solution right over there. And I've connected it all up to their stuff, right? So when I use my solution, it works pretty well, and it works in theirs. Like I said, this has been through 3 runs of ALM. So I've exported that managed project. I've imported that 3 times and imported the bridging solution 3 times. Works like a charm. The other thing that's pretty important in here from a solution perspective is this. So the one thing that I have done is I actually have separated out, and you can see over here, I've got my custom connector that I made to an API. You can see I've got my connection references for the Dataverse connector, as well as my custom connector, and I've got a flow that runs as well. Okay, so I've actually got 3 different things in there. The reason I separated that out, and exactly for the point that the gentleman or person's put in the chat, sorry, is that Flows can be temperamental, and they are, for a lot of the time, they are the thing that breaks your solution import. So in this scenario, it's the only time I do it is when I've separated it out until I know it's reliable. So bridging solutions are really cool. They're a great way to manage stuff. And yeah, just to reiterate, the reason I do it is because I want to keep the core clean. Okay, and that's really, really key. So just to quickly move out on the Multimaker's piece around managed and unmanaged and all that jazz. This is where the point of controversy is as well. And that's where in my Cloud for Sustainability discussion thing I was starting to worry about, because I've got two different dev environments. And I was like, what do I do? Do I import both as unmanaged or managed? And I tested, and actually I have both, which is random, I know. But then I publish out again. So it's actually working in different layers, this whole thing, right? But typically what you want to do is minimize this and try and get rid of it as much as possible and get people to export out into a layer that kind of shows things working together. But you may have an unmanaged layer. So you may have another managed layer on top of these three things that these people have built, and that brings it together. So that's what I found works. It can be a bit of a pain in the butt, but yeah. Oh, sorry, the lady, I apologize. I'm kind of trying to do too many things at once. Anyway, last couple of things real quick is when you start looking about upgrade versus updates, I get this confused every time, and I'm super sorry. Like, it's one thing that I've just never ever been able to get right. But when I start chatting around whether you should be upgrading or updating solutions, it's quite a common thing to have people ask. The difference is that upgrade removes stuff if it's been deleted. So if you have a managed solution and you have had things that have been deleted, when you import it into the environment, it actually will remove the controls that you don't have that have been removed. Whereas update doesn't do that, right? So it actually keeps the other versions, which it's kind of like I try not to do the update piece. I recently did an update, not an upgrade, with the Center of Excellence starter kit. And I got to tell you, I actually had to uninstall the whole thing. Like, I wrecked my environment completely. So that's kind of where I've struggled, is that I always, first of all, get these two things confused. But now I know, for me, it's normally going to be, upgrade first, above updates. And kind of like at a later point, you may find that you need to update all depending. So with that, right, before we go into something a little bit more fun, is the three key things you need to start remembering and start thinking about with ALM. Point number one, right? What are you going to be making? So remember, sizing that solution so you can figure out where to put it. Okay. And be super, super, super clear around the outcome. The second one is figure out who you will have in your team. And what I always do is I say the more people you have making, the more difficult it can be. So you may want to separate into different fusion squads, all depending. But kind of once you've done that, you know, you can either share an environment, or if you go for the Multimaker environment approach, just be aware that you will have to have that environment in the middle that knits everything together. And then manage and track your environment, solution, and strategy properly. Honestly, the amount of times I've gone into engagements where people have different solution strategies. So you have two solution architects and they've got two different strategies. It wrecks the whole thing. So you have to be very careful about your strategy and how you run with it. Okay. So those are the three kind of key things I wanted to leave you with today. I also thought we'd have a little bit of fun if everyone's up for it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a quiz. So if anyone's keen, what you'll need to do is go to this glorious website, www.menti.com. And if you either, wow, that came out massive in the chat. Look at that. That's amazing. So feel free to scan the QR code, or yeah, go right ahead, pop into menti.com, and we're going to have a little bit of fun, right? So let's see. Hopefully we can get a couple of you in. We have one person. Come, guys. Let's go. And I'm going to get you to answer some ridiculous questions. Here we go. I'll stick this in the chat as well. Cool. 1 second. There we go. Sweet. And that's the code. Right. So let's see if we can get going. So first things first, you got to let me know, how excited are you to be here at the end of this amazing session that Victor's run? Because It is very cool, and I just wanted to say thank you to him. And by the way, can you guys get in? There we go. Cool. Right, we've got a woohoo. That's great. I'll take it. Yeah, pretty stoked to be amazing. Infinite. That's great. Okay. So I'm very happy about that because I'm pretty sure Victor will be very happy. So a big thank you to you, my friend. Now we're gonna do some Q&A, right? We're gonna have a little bit of fun on the quiz. So first things first, right? How would you describe yourself from a Power Platform perspective? Are you technical, not technical at all, more of a badger whisperer? Somewhere in the middle, so not technical but knows some stuff. Somebody that loves to code, or somebody that can build motherboards with their mind, right? So I know Scott Durow is probably the last one on their list. Cool. Let's have a look. There we go. So I am going to select down. There we go. Hopefully it's working.
Yeah, it's marked as closed.
That's weird. Press C for open vote.
Voting is closed. Yeah.
There we go. Try it now.
Yes, it's okay now.
Amazing. Thank you. Sweet. So somewhere in the middle. Yeah, somebody can build motherboards with their mind. I have huge respect for you. Right, next one. So, how much do you know about ALM? So loads, whatever I learned over the last few weeks. Some stuff I'm looking for more, or not so much I'm willing to learn. So weirdly, oh, there we go. Not so much I'm willing to learn. Yeah, I think there's loads of people on that. And the other thing that's interesting is it's not just about moving solutions. It's around a lot of other really good stuff, right? So very, very important to know that. Most excellent. There we go. We got 8 people. Lovely. Whatever I've learned over the last 3 weeks. That's cool. Okay. Next one. I promise you I won't make this too long. So what do you think ALM is? Is it moving solutions between environments? Is it copying solutions between environments and tenants? Is it managing solutions through their life cycle, or Elon Musk's next child's name? Yeah, definitely someone is going to choose that. So you're absolutely right, except for 2 of us. It is managing solutions through their life cycle. It's not necessarily just about moving stuff, right? It's about actually managing that full life cycle of a solution. So nice work. Victor, everyone's done very well and learned a lot, and your presenters have been amazing. The next one. What do you know about Power Platform? So nothing. It's all come to. Why did I leave the conference? Sorry, this session. Nothing at all. I've come to the session by mistake. I'm a maker and I love building stuff. I know some stuff and I'm super keen to learn more. I know it all. I'm going to come up and present because I'm an oracle and basically a clone of Scott Durow. So if you've never met Scott Durow, that dude is such a rock star. Sorry, I'm a proper fanboy. That's Victor. I definitely voted that. Awesome. All right. We have there we go. Fantastic. There we go. Great, great. So nobody voted for point number 1. That means that we've all done our jobs very well. Last one. I think it's the second last one. No, third last. What tech do you currently use the most? So if you're thinking about Power Platform, what is the thing you use the most? And my wife teases me all the time and says that I'm a PowerPoint guru, which is not true because I actually build stuff. PowerPoint, respect. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. This is my favorite question, and it's the last question. What is this thing called over here? So what is that little green ceiling fan icon looking thing called? Is it XRM, Dataflex, Dataflex Pro, Dataverse, Common Data Service, Project Oakdale, or Common Data XRM OpenFlexi Service Verse? Yeah, so 5 of you are right, 1 of you are wrong, but it is very funny.
I was gonna say Dataflex just for that.
Just to upset Microsoft, yeah. So that, my friends, was the world's most pointless quiz. I would like to thank you for participating in that. You've all been amazing. And I will send you the results from that incredibly detailed presentation. But thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I'll take as many questions as you can ask if we've got time. And I'll do my level best to answer. And I don't know everything. My wife is the only person that knows everything, the end.
I don't think we left any questions open, but I wanted to thank you, Chris. I want to thank the participants, of the people who stuck together for the last 12 weeks. I mean, I didn't know we were going to get this much information towards the end, but I think it fitted out into the agenda perfectly. I really appreciate, Chris, you sharing your wisdom here with us. I think most of us know where to go to for technical stuff, but
Yeah.
a lot of people are looking for guidance in terms of more practical tips. And maybe this is a format that we follow for whatever are the things that we do. If we decide to do, I mean, we're gonna do one mentorship session only on Canvas apps next year. So maybe we do the technical stuff first, and then we do practical tips on Canvas apps as well. But this is really nice. Really appreciate you doing this for us.
Hey, it's cool, man. Anytime. There was other stuff I was gonna get into and break, but next time. I actually wanted to do the flow thing, but like I just knew we were gonna run out of time.
All right. Anybody who wants to unmute and post questions, even if you want to turn your camera, you're free to do it.
Sorry about the coughing, folks.
All right, Pranav, go for it.
Nazi.
I don't know what happened. I think my camera froze.
Oh, that's all right, man. At least you're smiling.
Yeah, I don't. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all frozen for me here.
Sorry, man. It needs a rest. Well, listen, yeah. I guess from my end, thank you all very much.
Grace,
Yes.
your T-shirt is so cool.
Oh, thank you. It's a Power Platform School from
Oh,
my
so
friends
cool.
Alexio and Trisha. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I got it at one of the conferences here.
Oh, right.
If you ever get a chance, you must check it out. It's very, very cool. The
Oh,
school thing, yeah.
okay.
And I'm sorry, I didn't read your name correctly. I was in like such a rush.
It's fine. It's fine.
Thank you. There we go, Andre. Thank you very much. Yeah. Cool. Well, listen, folks, if you have any questions, just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll do my level best to answer. I don't know everything, like I said, but if I don't know it, I can find it out. That I can tell you. Cool.
All right, everybody. We'll talk with you soon. Stay tuned.
Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome week, eh?
Thanks,
All right,
bye.
take care.
Guys.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.